Welcome to another Cleverly Changing podcast. We are so excited that you have chosen to join us. We have a new guest for this episode, but before we tell you more about our guest, we want you to know that we need you to share this podcast to your friends and your family, people that want to supplement their children's education. So thank you for listening and tuning in. I am your co host, Elle. I am the mother of twins. My kids are 12 now, and I'm excited to be able to support families who are choosing to educate their children. So come on this journey, listen to this conversation, share it with your friends. And Miriam, tell everybody who you are.
I am mother of four little people. They range from 3 to 13 now. And I am a writer, a farmer, a creator, educator, many things.
Awesome. All right, we have a guest today, and I am super excited because she is an amazing mom and an amazing woman. Krystal Henry, can you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for having me on the podcast. I'm glad to be here today. So I am a mom of one, a lovely 8-year-old son. I am coming to you from Baltimore, Maryland, where we all reside, myself, my husband, and my son. And I spend my time by day in the education world. And then my passion is writing about all things womanhood and motherhood. So that's who I am.
Awesome. So we are all in Maryland. So this is a unique podcast for us because usually our guests are from so many different states, but we are honored to have someone that is in the same state as us. So this is definitely going to be a treat. And Miriam is also an only child. So I know that she can definitely relate to your son and that whole experience. So let's just jump right into this thing. Can you kind of tell us about your parenting journey? Just a little bit about, what stands out to you about parenting a young Black son?
Well, I don't know why I had this gut feeling that my son in utero was actually a girl. I just had this inkling that I was carrying a girl. So I carried on, for months until the sonogram appointment when we found out that she was in fact a he. And so I remember thinking, oh gosh, like what am I supposed to do with a son? I have no idea what to do. But in the years that have passed, he is 8 now, I could not imagine um I couldn't imagine anything different. I really do think that it was my destiny to be able to have a young male child, to be able to help to rear him, to show him, the experience of what it is like to have love between, a mother and a son. So, I have used my experience being parented by my parents, being in a two-parent household, and watching my grandparents on both sides as the real example for me of what it is to mother, to really be there. And I say that kind of with some quotation marks, but really to be present, to listen, be supportive, to allow them to try things, to allow them to make mistakes, and then also to hold them accountable. I don't know. Some of my friends were thinking that I would initially be a little bit of a pushover in motherhood, and not that I'm strict. I'm not walking around with a belt in my hands. Don't get that mistaken. However, I am very firm in what it is that I say, and my son knows that I mean what I say, that I don't say anything that I don't mean. And I have a statement for him that, we can be friendly, but I am not your friend. And he initially, a couple of years ago, was extremely offended by that. And I said, well, think about it. I'm your mom. Like, if I'm your friend, then we have a totally different relationship. But I think it's very important for me to create that boundary for him, as we can laugh, we can joke, we can have a good time. I am your mother first and foremost, and there are things that come along with that. And then when we are, friendly, there are things that come along with that too. So that gives a little bit of an overview of a perspective of my approach.
Yes, you touched on three things that I want to kind of really get into. The first one that you said was be present. And that really strikes me because as parents, and I know Miriam, with four little ones, being present can sometimes be a challenge. And so for all parents, it's not the easiest thing to do, especially right now during this pandemic when many of us are working from home, trying to raise our kids, cook our food, run errands, do homeschooling or remote learning or whatever. We just have a lot on our plate, and so being present is it's evolved to what it was pre-pandemic. So can you tell us what being present is for you and your family?
First off, it means me putting down the distractions, putting down the phone, closing the laptop, getting up from my desk, because where we eat, where we play is now where we work, where we work out, where we sleep, where we, have science experiments, where he goes to school. Like everything is compounded into one space. So I am very mindful of my time. It means for me to have a hard stop to my workday so that I am not carrying on into the evening. That means me, asking him questions about his day. That means me keeping in touch with his teacher. That means me, like I said, putting the electronics down and doing some of the things that I know will show him that I am paying attention to him. Like not just being in his space, but going the extra mile to show him that I'm paying attention to him, especially with him being a single child and with my husband and I being his only other source of real connection with people. It's very important. And some days it looks better than others. There, and that's just being honest. Some days I'm like, okay, I kind of hit it out the park. I feel good about this. Other days I think, oh, I can't wait till tomorrow to kind of redo some things. So really it's trial and error. And then part of it is me even being honest with him sometimes about, okay, this didn't really go so well, or I got really caught up in what it is that I was doing, or, like seeing how I can appropriately share with him a little bit more about my schedule and maybe how my time is, so that he can better understand and not think that I'm not trying to, be with him or not trying to spend time with him. So it is communicating a bit more with him about what is going on.
Yeah, you mentioned communication. I think that's a big part of being present. So even when even when I notice that I'm feeling unable to really tap in, I just say, look, I need some time. I need some space. I understand you want something, you need something. I can't right now. Just give me 2 seconds. Let me pull myself together and I'll be right back. Just things like that to really things like that can, let them know that you're not trying to disregard them or, push them aside. It's just, I need a minute and I will be right with you. Just
Yeah.
hold on.
And the that part is a real teachable moment, because it serves several different purposes. Number one, it allows me to be honest with him. It forces me to be vulnerable with a child in a way that I did not always see my parents be vulnerable with me, because I did grow up in a household where it was more of a, do what I say, not as I do. And I'm the parent and you're the child, and you just do. And I wanted to do some things differently when it came to that. So again, where it is appropriate, I will share some things with him. And then it also teaches him, second thing, it teaches him how to be able to speak up for himself, how to say, how he's feeling, and how to really receive that. I guess that's the third part too, how to receive that from other people when they share, that there may be a change in schedule, or just letting him know how someone is feeling and having that vulnerable moment.
Absolutely. One of the things that you said just then, you said that you and your husband are really his only people to connect with right now. How are you allowing him to connect with others during this time?
Yeah, he has one close friend that, is in our quote unquote bubble, so to speak, either way, that they will see each other every couple of weeks. And he has used his online abilities to be able to connect with other people, and that, he's a pro at Google Meet, and using Zoom to have video chats with friends, and when he can see people in person. And then so those are the real main ways, and of course through school. But it's not 100% the way that I really want it to be. And there, I have no solution for that. I was saying to a friend how about every maybe 6 weeks or so, he has a breakdown about something related to being home and, COVID, and not being able to connect with other kids. And the only thing that I can do is really to console him. And, what we do is to console him, to allow him the space to have those emotions, and then, support him in using his coping skills to get through that moment. So those are really some of the ways that we are doing it. And of course, as it gets warmer, we'll be able to be outside more and doing some other things out a little bit more.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think what you're doing is great, because I think all parents, whether they have one child or several children, it's a struggle. And I have twins. So, of course, they have each other, but they miss their friends just like any other kid. And so, just like you, they're using Zoom, they're using different apps, that they can play and connect and things like that. So, we just have to be a little bit more flexible, because I think pre-pandemic, we were more of a stickler about technology and the time that they spend on it. So, we've been a little bit more flexible when it comes to that, so that they can connect with other people. And I think having a friend in the bubble that you are communicating with, that's like a lifesaver right there, because we all, regardless of how much online interaction we get, we need human interaction. That's just how humans were created. So what you're doing is just fabulous. And I know that there are many people in your shoes that are, trying to figure this thing out. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And like I said, I try not to take too much in terms of planning for too far into the future. I may be only able to see 1 or 2 days out. You know what I mean? To say, okay, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. Or if I'm clear on kind of what the plans are, because there have been times when, maybe the plans have changed with the friend in the bubble, and I misspoke and said, oh, you all are going to get together, and then something happened and they couldn't. And that's a humongous disappointment to a kid. So I am focused on, again, not trying to plan out too far with him, but really focusing on the days that are right in front of me.
That's terrific. Something else that you had mentioned when you were, just talking initially, was that you discipline him, that you were surprised, your friends were surprised by how strict, or, that you would be even. And so I think discipline is a big part of parenting, but it can be kind of tricky to figure out. And I know that us as, parents of color, as diverse families, the standard, the bar is very high for what discipline should look like.
Yeah.
How have you really been able to kind of navigate that and make it your own, so that, you're not doing too much, not doing too little, but it feels comfortable for you?
Well, the first thing is that I really have spent some time getting really paying attention to him, right? And to his patterns and how he moves. He's a different kid than I was. I have an older sister. I was the, quote unquote baby, and I was the daring kid. So when you told me that the stove was hot, don't touch it, what did Krystal do? I might have laid on the stove. That was me. But my son is not that kid. If you tell him the stove is hot, he'll go over and he'll feel some of the heat, but he's not going to touch it. So I have spent time paying attention to his habits and his movements. And I understand that he's getting older. There are some things though that I have already seen now that I'm like, okay, this is a part of who he is. And I have been consistent, right? So when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And he's come to find that to be true. We just had a situation 2 days ago with us finding out that he was not taking care of some of his asynchronous work. And I simply showed him the email from his teacher. Like, I'm not a yeller. I'm not a, jump up and down sort of thing. And I said, this is what's going to happen. You're going to take care of that. Do not touch anything related to technology until that's done. And he was crushed. I mean, he was absolutely crushed. And part of me wanted, a small part of me wanted to break on it just because I saw how much it hurt him. But way more of me said, absolutely not. If I don't if I don't continue to set the standard, he is going to think that he will not be held accountable. And what we do inside of this house teaches him, it should be teaching him what happens in the rest of the world. So regardless of what happens in anybody else's household, I need him to understand that there are consequences for your actions. There are reactions for every action. And, to kind of think 2 and 3 steps ahead. Like, if I don't do this, then my teacher's going to tell my parents, and then my parents are going, and I'm trying to teach him a little bit of the game, but he's 8, he doesn't get the game yet, but I'm trying to teach. I don't want him to be savvy, but I want him to be smart and to begin to think 2 and 3 steps down the road when it comes to some things. So I have been on myself to be consistent, and that's a big deal for me.
I totally understand where you're coming from when you talk about, towing that line, because you don't want them to take it too far. But the knowledge of how to navigate these systems is absolutely imperative to being a real live working adult that is a viable person that can uphold themselves and be depended on. And I know it's really hard to expect, our kids to think ahead. That's not what a child does. That's not really where they are developmentally. But, you still have to kind of give them these steps, and it gets a little tricky. It's like when the kids are getting picked on or something. You want to tell them, look, this is what you say, this is what you do, but you can't just say that, because then you already know the way things are set up now. Retaliation brings some other kind of retaliation that you don't want. Right. You don't want that extra smoke. It's very difficult to navigate that space because we're thinking ahead. Then that means they're going to figure out how to get over on me. And we don't want that. But at the same time, we want to raise free thinkers, critical thinkers. We want them to question people in authority. We want them to buck the system in some regards and not just go along to get along, because it's not going to be in their best interest all the time.
Yeah. And then add on to that, he's a male. So, raising a Black male child in 2020 and 2021 and beyond now has a very different meaning. And I can only imagine that, my father, he was a baby boomer, and, my husband was born in the 70s, that I believe that being a Black male has always had a very special, role in society. I think even more now, it's even more heightened. And then to raise him in this day and age where he, sees images on television, where he hears about, what has happened to people of color, other teenage boys, grown adult men, grown adult women, and then even to see what's happening in our political system now, it takes on a very different meaning, and it's something that we do talk about. We talk about within reason, according to what he can handle. We will give him the space to ask questions. I don't push him. I will ask him if he has questions and he will express them. Sometimes they'll just come out of the clear blue and we will answer them and, give him the space, and give him the space to be able to know that he can ask us anything and that we will answer him and be honest with him about it.
That's great. You kind of said a few things. You said that you tell him not to touch his technology. You also don't yell. What are some other ways that you discipline him in a gentle way?
A lot of talking. A lot of talking, sometimes to the point of nausea, but there's a lot of talking and a lot of processing, honestly, to help him to think about his choices, to think about his the impact of his choices. And that right there, the conversation piece is what really drives it home for him, because he is more of an oral processor. And so when he's able to talk through it and then to ask questions and then to let it digest and then to, share a thought, that helps to really lock it in. So that really is what we do a lot of. And we don't have to do a lot of, removing things from him, because sometimes it may only take a small reminder, like make sure you do this, or think about what you're going to say before you say it, like a lot of those reminders for him, to be mindful of, am I answering quickly because this is the truth, or am I answering quickly because it's just the first thing that came to mind and I didn't put any thought into whether or not I really did brush my teeth, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So a lot of conversations, that really is probably the main tool that I use a lot, and one of the most gentle ways that I use.
That's awesome. I mean, when you were saying that, I thought of parables. You know, Storytelling does teach lessons, and it did way back thousands of years ago, and we're still using that method today. So I think that is awesome. One of the things that you mentioned discipline, you mentioned be present, and you also mentioned boundaries, setting boundaries with your child. So you touched on it when you were talking about discipline and the storytelling and everything. What are some other ways that you set boundaries that really help him, understand? I think, setting boundaries with our children is something that our parents did with us, but they definitely took it to an extreme. And so now in the new millennium, I think we're trying to find a happy medium, a balance with what is a healthy boundary. So can you kind of expound on that?
Sure. One of the things that comes to mind is, now that he's old enough to know, who people are. For instance, if I get a phone call in the car, which, pre-COVID was a lot more regular, but let's say I got a phone girlfriend and maybe she has something good to tell me, and now he knows people and he can connect the parts. So of course I would get off the phone, but even now I think about, okay, I have to let him know this is my conversation. This is not a conversation that involves you. And I say it just like that. Or if he sees, like for instance, a phone call may come in the car and he may say, oh, that's so and so, or and I said, this is a phone call for me, or this is a boundary, because what I don't want him to think is that because he knows the people in our life, and because the lines are crossing, that my business is his business, because it is not. And there were a few times in the very beginning, I can think maybe a couple of years ago, when he got a little bit offended by that, about me telling him that this conversation did not involve him, or if I was discussing something with his dad at home, and I'm like, this is between me and your dad. This is not a conversation between the two of I. And it could have been about, I don't know, toilet paper or something else. But again, teaching him that unless we involve him in the conversation, it is not for him to just jump into and to really interject in. And then also another big boundary I set for him is when it is just my time for my own space. You know what I mean? So now, with being home in a pandemic, Saturdays feel different. However, it's still a break from the work week. And so if I have to say I'm going to take a nap, or I'm going to lay down, or I'm going to go for a drive, then that's what it is that I'm going to do. And I don't feed into sometimes the myriad of questions that he may have, well, where did you go? What did you do? What did you buy? What did you do? I'm like, I went out, I came back. It's good to see you. And that's it. And that is a boundary for me, because again, if I open that door up, then imagine how he may interact with other adults, with questioning them about their patterns and behaviors, and some of the choices that they make. And the same thing with him. I model for him what I want him to see. So I don't do that with him. I don't bombard him with a lot of questions. Or if he's on a video call with his friends, I'm not jumping into the call, or, hey, so and so, it's good to see, So again, I'm showing him and I'm telling him what it is that I want to see. And that's big, to double it with, showing him as well.
I like your two-step approach.
Wow, that's a powerful lesson.
Yeah. It is. Now, I have a question, because a lot of us, as you said, Elle, are making conscious effort in putting conscious effort into doing things differently than our parents may have raised us. I find that a lot of my grown-ups, even though I guess technically I'm a grown-up, I still feel like I'm a little kid all the time still. And so I still refer to my adults as my grown-ups. So even at my age, the grown-ups will still say things like, you better let them know you need to do this or that. And I'm like, look, that's not how I do things. And I appreciate your concern. But do you have any pushback from the grown-ups in your life? And if you do, how do you handle their, I'll say, concerned intrusion?
It's on a case-by-case basis. And really, it probably has really only, honestly, number one, it's come from people that know us and that love us and that have our best interests at heart. And it may be my mother saying, oh, he needs to have shoes on in the house when he likes to go bare feet, and so sometimes I will have a response for it. More often than not, I won't respond to a comment. And so I've been clear to say, is this a question or is this a comment? And I say this to myself, because if it is a comment, then a comment doesn't need to be addressed. And especially when it comes to how we operate inside of our home. It's different. Let's say if I go to someone else's home and, there's a comment or a question that's being made about how we parent with a particular situation. But when we are inside of our home and there's a comment being made, let's say about him not having shoes on, or, something else, then I let that comment be that comment. And, earlier on, I would have a response for everything. And there were some times when I felt myself, having this struggle to have something to say for everything. And then, my husband's point is, Krystal, you don't have to address it. Why are you even addressing it? And so again, it's like, is this a question or is it a comment? Because if it's a comment, then that's your opinion and you are entitled to your opinion. But I don't have to respond to that, because that right there will easily reel me in. And where, as moms, we feel like we have to explain our choices to get someone to better understand them, when honestly, this choice doesn't impact you. It doesn't hurt him. And I'm not going to have him to make a choice that's going to harm him in any type of way. So if it's no shoes in the house, guess what? The natural consequence is your feet will be cold. And then you know what to do to solve that problem. But if your feet don't get cold, then your feet don't get cold. That's the end of it. He's got a million pairs of slippers, but I don't have the energy to keep reminding him to put stupid slippers on all day long, But again, I have learned to not respond to everything. Everything doesn't need a response.
What you're just talking about, it made me think of marriage. Like you have to pick certain things. Everything you don't need to comment on is just not healthy. And that's the same with our kids. So while we're talking about marriage, you said that you and your husband, discuss how you're going to, raise your kid. And one of the things that you talked about is that you also had a two-parent home. So what is it that you want your kid to see from the interaction that you have with your husband?
Yeah, the beautiful thing is that both my husband and I came from two-parent households, and prior to my father's passing, our parents were married for, there was only a 1 year difference in the number of years that they were married. So our parents have similar stories of being together for quite a while. And what I want to show my son is that, number one, marriage is possible, that it works, that it looks good, that regardless of what the world says, marriage is a good thing, and that you can be married and have fun. You can be married and have a disagreement, but that doesn't mean that it's the end. You can be married and have your own life, your own interests. Let me say that you can have your own interests. You can have, you can be able to pursue your hopes and dreams through your marriage. You can have someone that is your definite, cheerleader. You can have so many good things out of a marriage. And that is one of the things that I like that he sees, is that we date each other, is that we have time for he and I. He may, so Thursdays are our date nights, and he may go over to his grandparents' house around the corner on Thursdays. And so now we order in, we go get takeout. So the other day he said, "Oh, is that from your date night?" And, so he says that. And I said, "Yes." And so I was talking about a movie that we watched. He said, "Oh, did you watch that on your date night?" Yes, we did. And that's the end of it. And that's a boundary too, because I'm not discussing with my son, what I'm doing with his dad, who is my husband first, on our time together. But I want him to see that marriage works, and not everyone in our circle is married. And, but those that are, he knows it, and he may ask questions about, how many years they've been married, or he will ask us questions about our wedding and our marriage, and, look at pictures and really put all the pieces together. But I want him to understand that regardless of what he decides in his adult life, that marriage is possible, and that it is attainable, in this day and age.
Yes. Wow, that's beautiful. I think it's beautiful that both of you came from a similar background. Was that something that attracted you to your husband?
Absolutely, it was. Because he had an understanding of what marriage looked like, and not with, rose colored glasses, and not with strife either, you know what I mean? Because our parents both, their marriages, of course, marriages ebbs, and they ebb and flow, right? And so we were both able to see that from our perspective as second children, because he's the youngest as well. And I like that his parents mirrored my parents in a lot of ways, and that made me feel comfortable, that because he had that foundation, and because he saw that growing up, that he would know what to begin to model himself afterwards, that he had a direct example in his household, whether he wanted to follow that or not, that he had that example. And I appreciated that a lot.
Yes, yes. So I think that, having kids see positive behaviors in marriage is something that is invaluable, because they can take that on for the future, of course, when they're in a relationship, but it's actually good for all types of relationships, even friendships. So seeing how people resolve conflicts in a healthy way, seeing how people communicate respectfully, how they interact, like there are so many lessons that can be learned just from seeing two people together in the same room. And so it sounds like you all were very intentional about how you reared him, how you're doing it, because you're still in the process of doing it. And I think there are hundreds and thousands of families that definitely would love to be on the same page with their spouse,
Mhm.
and they don't necessarily know how to get on the same page. So did you guys have conversations prior to having a child about how you would raise a child, or did it just fall into place?
Well, we did, and we actually waited 4 years after being married before we decided to have a child. And I'm glad. I know that that's not everyone's journey. I'm glad that we were able to have that foundation, because I like to refer to that as our single married days. When we could just up and go without a care in the world. And when we made the decision to begin to have kids, it was on purpose. And we and then things really fell into place. There was, of course, trial and error, but things fell into place. And that's where we relied on our parents, on our sisters, on the people in our lives who had already had children and reared them, and then relied on our own memory and relied on each other. Because after all of the opinions and ideas that others would share, we had to make the decision for ourselves. And so we grew in our confidence with our decisions that we were making for our son and related to our household. And it really, my husband's, I guess, position on things is like, look, once I make the decision, I make it, and it doesn't necessarily have to involve a lot of people. And it took me a little while to get to that point in my motherhood journey, because a new mom, it comes with so much, to it, and everybody has their opinion of how you're supposed to do this and how you're supposed to do that. And really, those are, sort of those step by step sort of things. But I was more concerned with the overall. I am responsible for raising a whole person, in the world. Like, forget diapering and, feeding and sleep. I'm worried about, am I going to show him the right example? But that's the kind of stuff that I rely more on, the conversations that my husband and I had and the decisions that we made. And again, the confidence that we built to say, we're going to go in this direction. And if this doesn't work, then we'll make some adjustments, but we don't, we're going to rely on each other for this.
That's very powerful. So you have a lot on your plate. And I know that your son is able to witness you, working and also fulfilling your own dreams. So you're an entrepreneur. How are you really showing him, these business lessons that he can apply to now, he can apply to the future? And, how are you kind of sharing with him your world and teaching him about entrepreneurship while he's young?
Well, the first thing is that I don't make it a secret, to him. I have told him from the very beginning, when he could really, be able to understand what it is that I'm doing. So he can tell you about Around the Way Mom probably better than I can in some ways. But and I have also involved him in what I'm doing. So with my Mom Chat series, he was a part of that. He was home while we were filming. He will see me, just like before our call, I let him know. I said, hey, I have a call. I talked with him about it. I said, I just need a few minutes. When I come out, then I'm all yours. So I don't keep that a secret, and I involve him in it. And that has helped him to begin to dream more about what he wants to do. So he has some business ideas. He now wants to pursue acting, all these different things. And I think seeing that you can do multiple things shows him that's a possibility. Seeing his dad as well doing multiple things, it shows that there's a possibility that you do not have to only be one thing. You can make a choice. You can be one thing, you can do two things, you can do three things. And that was something that, again, thinking about how I grew up, part of the lesson was you go to college, you get a job, you work that job, you retire from that job, and that's it. And it was not, I didn't see the lessons that I'm showing him necessarily all the way. Now, my father did venture into entrepreneurship later on, but initially it wasn't anything that I saw. So I don't keep it a secret, and I talk to him about it. I involve him in it when I can, and I share the wins with him. I share with him some of my ideas. I share with him some of the things that didn't go well, so that he knows all of these different pieces and parts. And I like that he's able to see that.
Wow. So you've been doing so much, teaching him so much. One of the other things that you kind of touched on in the conversation is that you let him see you practice self-care.
Yes.
So how are you incorporating self-care right now during this crazy time? How are you able to, what does it even look like for you?
It looks like me exercising at home in the morning, in the living room, in the family room, jumping rope outside, going for walks. It looks like me cooking is a way that I like to, express myself at home. So it looks like me, sort of meal prepping and cooking. It looks like me taking a nap when I want to take a nap. It looks like me going for a drive when I want to go for a drive. It looks like me having a phone conversation or a video call with my girlfriend and talking loud and laughing hard. It looks like me watching something on TV that I want to watch. It looks like me saving money. I talk with him about the fact that, okay, I'm saving money because I realize that, I think financial self-care is one of those parts that doesn't get touched on a lot. But hey, if I don't have the money, then I can't do some of these other things. So I talk with him about, sometimes some of the choices that I've made with my money. And, it looks like me putting myself first in some different ways. And again, like having a stop time to my work day, or making sure that I'm eating, making sure that, that I'm doing these things for myself, that I'm doing for him, and for his dad. And sometimes it comes with an explanation. Sometimes, again, kids are better taught through what they can see and what they see you do on a regular basis. And these are things that I am about. I realize that if I'm not taking care of myself, I am no good for anybody in this house. And the house isn't good either.
Right.
True. So I have a question about.
Now, did your mother model?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, did your mother model what self-care was for you?
Not necessarily. It was not, honestly, probably until maybe really high school-ish, when and I was talking with my mother about this and trying to remember the year when my mother decided that she wanted to buy herself a fur coat. And so she created a separate bank account. And at that time, her and my dad had all the money combined. And it was a big deal in our household for my mom to have a separate bank account. And, part of that was like, she wanted to do something for herself, right? And that my dad at that time didn't see it in that way. And then fast forward to after my dad passed, that's when I began to see my mother practice more self-care. So it wasn't modeled for me in that way. But on the flip side, it was clearly modeled through me watching my mother-in-law. I would look at my mother-in-law and she would, say, I'm going out with my girlfriends, or I'm going to do this for myself, or I'm going to do that for myself. And I remember sometimes sitting back thinking, whoa, that's a little different. You're the same age as my mom. Like, this is kind of different. And I watched the examples and I thought to myself, okay, I don't have to put myself on the back burner for the sake of my kids and forget all about myself. And for that. And again, this doesn't mean that my mom didn't do it all the time, because I remember being with her at jazzercise, right? Or being with her, and she was very active in her church, and that was a part of what she did to really feed herself. It was just modeled in a slightly different way. And it makes me think about how I want, again, my son to understand that we all are taking care of ourselves individually, and then we take care of ourselves as a family, collectively.
Well, I was just
Yes.
going to ask you about making the time, because you're a wife, you're a mom, and you've got your own business. And I know that when it comes to, managing everything, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I'll get to me later. So what are some of the ways that you are intentional about giving yourself about giving yourself the time and the space to go and jump rope outside or go for a drive?
Well, part of it is, me. Well, I will wake up a little bit earlier, and honestly, it comes down to, I think, making the time. We always say that we make the time for what we want to make the time for, and I with all the different things, everything doesn't happen in every single day. So be clear on that. Some days I am, focusing more on the social self-care. Some days I'm focusing more on the physical self-care. Some days I'm focused more on the financial self-care. It does I'm not I don't I don't force myself to look at all the areas and to kind of focus on all of them every day, but I will, in my own mind, set my intention for the next day, right? So today's a Sunday. I'm like, okay, I already know in my mind I am going to jump rope tomorrow morning. So what do I need to do so that I'm setting myself up right so that that can happen? That means I need to get to bed a little bit earlier. I need to make sure that my clothes are clean, and that's me, because I'm going to do that before the rest of the household gets up and gets moving. So it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. And, I will put things on a calendar in a heartbeat. We have a family calendar, and, things will go on there that I know will impact, the rest of the household. When I have a call, when I have, a meeting, when I need to be gone, I'll put those things on there so that there is no discrepancy involved. And then, again, when I can find the time to squeeze in some of that time for myself, I'm going to squeeze it in.
So it sounds like you have a daily practice, which I find amazing and wonderful. And I'm low key jealous just a little bit.
But remember, some days are better than others. Some days.
Of course, some days are definitely better than.
Yeah. But again, I really do think about, a couple of things that I want to get done for that following day, and try not to put the pressure on myself to say I'm gonna get all of it done, in one day. Because it could be, if I say, okay, I'm gonna focus on the laundry on Tuesday, it could be that it gets washed and dried and it's still sitting in the dryer. It got clean, you know what I mean? So it's, everything, it may take on different forms. And again, it's definitely looked different being home during a pandemic. So I am giving myself the space to allow it to look different as well.
You just talked about the family calendar, and for the first time since the pandemic, we implemented a family calendar, and we're actually using Google. What tool are you using for a family calendar?
Google. So I have a tab, I have a drop down for me. We have a drop down for family. I will send an invite to my husband's work calendar so that way it can show up on both. I'll send an invite to my son, through his email, so it will show up on his calendar. That Google calendar has been a lifesaver, because it's been a couple of times where my husband has said, wait, that wasn't on the calendar. I said, oh yeah, I kind of forgot to put that on the calendar. But this way, because we are both actually all three of us are accustomed to using a calendar now with, my husband now, of course, with work, but now with my son for being in school virtually, that has taken on a very different role for him. So he is accustomed and knows how to handle it. If he didn't, then it may look like us using some kind of written form in the household, but really the Google Calendar is what works best, and talking about it. So we will, do our best on a Sunday or a Monday over dinner to say, let's just run through the week and kind of talk about what we each have on tap for the week, and, take it from there. And if that doesn't happen, then of course we still have the Google Calendar that we are always, checking to make sure we know what's going on.
I love that you just said that you kind of have like a family session, a family planning session. With this being the new year, so many families are like they don't want to do resolutions, but family planning is so essential. And I think for us, it was also something that we implemented this year. We sat down with everybody in the family and we talked about what they wanted to work on, what they liked about, what type of activities they want to get into, maybe some things that they don't want to do that, happened in the past. How do you really incorporate him? Do you give your kid a say in those family sessions? And how do you kind of go about that?
Yeah, with our weekly family meetings, he will we'll sit around and say, "All right, family meeting time. What's on your schedule?" And we go one by one, and then we talk about it. When it came down to a resolution this year, he was asking a lot of questions about it, and he was asking me, asking us both about our resolutions, and we began to talk about them. And so he decided on his own without any prompting. He said, "Well, my resolution is I want to try new things." And I said, "Okay." And so I began to ask him questions. Well, what does that look like for you? Try new things is very broad. What does that look like? So one of the things for him was, wanting to try some new foods, right? So as we even went over this last week, he said something about not trying something. I said, "Oh, well, remember your resolution?" He said, "You're right. I did say I was going to try new things. So I'm going to try that." And so he's beginning to apply it to different parts of his life. I know that as his mom, I'm going to, help to remind him sometimes if he's being a little bit resistant with some things, just saying, "Hey, I thought you were going to try new things," and try new things could look like trying a new way of thinking, not even a thing, but perhaps a new approach. So yes, we did talk about it, and it's something that we all play a part in when it comes to our regular family meetings.
Wow. I when you were talking, I was thinking about just this weekend, my daughter said to me, "Hey mom, I remember that you wanted to exercise for at least 30 minutes a day. Some days you missed it." And I was like, you're right. And I said, remember that it's a goal. So I'm not gonna, always do everything I want to do. And that's okay. Like I'm showing her that I'm giving myself grace so that we definitely it's something that I want to do and I'll get better. And I'm okay with her, I have no, but then I have to help each other out. We have to, exercise as a family. And so once she said that, it also dawned on me that I need to be intentional about keeping my word and really sticking with it because she's watching me. So I just thought that was something that really just kind of resonated with me that you guys do because it is something that we're trying to do and just get better at. We're never at a point where we're at a level where we've just done everything we're supposed to. We're always at a level where we can do a little bit better, we can grow. And so that's what we have to really show our kids. It's okay to grow. It's okay to make mistakes. You said that earlier. And I think that's so true. So
Yeah.
I just, all that you've shared with us has just been enriching. It's been powerful. And is there anything else you want our listeners to know?
Really, in this day and time, take the time to really listen to your kids, and to really tap into that, to some of that emotional intelligence, and helping them to build up the ability to be vulnerable, demonstrating that for them, talking with them about how they feel, giving them a space to express what they're thinking, give them a space to ask questions, making it a safe space for them, because when we can demonstrate that and set the stage for that, that can help to make them feel safe. And really that's what it's about, because with the pandemic, it's taken their feeling of safety and security, because it certainly has taken mine. It may toss it around, here and there, and with a kid who has less of an ability to understand what's happening, then I can only imagine sometimes the fear that he has felt, or the uncertainty that he has felt. So really giving your kids the space, to ask questions and to share how they feel and then answer them honestly. If you don't know, many a time I've said, I don't know. And sometimes even realizing that depending on what it is that they share, we may not have to have an answer for it. They may just need a space to simply say how they feel and to, feel like it's done in a safe space. So that's really important for me.
I think that's beautiful. And it's very, I don't want to say difficult, but it can be challenging at times as an adult to, kind of restrain from hanging our adultness over our children and trying to, push them into our way of thinking, or, giving them that space to say something, because really it's what we really want them to do, especially in their younger years, so that it becomes habit. So when they get older, they are more comfortable coming to us with these things. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful sentiment to close.
Yeah. And even, with them sharing it, you can maybe not in that moment, but maybe it's afterwards at another point in time, be able to explain or, teach how to phrase things, right? So that they're not offensive or, teaching that. But in a moment when it's raw emotion, just let it hang out. But, again, those are all teachable moments to be able to teach our kids how to say things to adults that are more sensitive, but they can be said respectfully. And teaching them how to have dialogue about things, that it doesn't have to be a my way or the highway, or I'm just going to walk around with these thoughts and not be able to express them at all. But it takes time. That's what it really takes. That's what I really wanted to say, is like, I think as parents, with us doing so many things, we may not find the time. I don't always want to take the time, but that's the biggest, they are our biggest investment, our most important investment. And time is what it's going to cost us.
Yes, the time and the investment. I totally agree with you there. It's very, it's just hard to really, step out of ourselves and do what's required. I don't know, maybe some people find it easier. I don't always, but it's hard to, put my authority behind me in order to really service their needs and give them the tools to navigate situations and, life in general.
Yeah.
Oh, but please do share your contact information and how we can get in contact with you on the social media.
Great. So I am pretty active on Instagram, and I am at Round the Way Mom. Unfortunately, I don't have rights to Around the Way Mom, but I am at Round the Way Mom. And then the website is aroundthewaymom.com. So those are the main two places where you can be able to find me and to contact me, interact with me in any of those locations.
Definitely visit our show notes page so that you can get access to how you can connect with her, because she is a wealth of knowledge. I just love what you said, what you shared, and just your transparency. So I think it's very healthy, just your whole approach to parenting. And I know that you have a lot of valuable information on your website that people should definitely check out. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being willing to just talk to us and get to know us in this, way. So I appreciate it having you on the Cleverly Changing podcast.
And thank you so much for the invitation. It was a great, 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 great conversation.
Yeah, so any favorite resources that you have, would you like to share?
I actually created a couple of things. I have on my website a few free downloadable self-care guides. So it breaks down self-care in 5 different areas. So physical, financial, spiritual, social. You can be able to download the guide to write down, what your approach to self-care is. And then for 2021, what I have started to do is to journal out my prayers. So I like to journal, I like to write, and I have liked and been liking more of guided journals. So I said, oh, well, let me, come up with some prompts, and I did this honestly for myself. And the Lord spoke very clearly to me to share this with other people. So I have shared this with others in terms of journal prompts, from the approach of, womanhood, partnership, and family, and in friendship and in business, like a way to get you jump started with what to think about in terms of what you want to write. And then you can add on to that what your prayer is, what your intention is for that area, and really thinking about what you want to manifest, because we can move our thoughts and dreams to saying, this is what I'm going to manifest. Because, a friend was very clear with me and said, look, we manifest all day long. Why not spend the time and the energy to manifest what we want? And let's think about it in these areas as moms, so not only with motherhood, but again, with womanhood, through partnership, through family, through friendship, and in business. So those are some things that I have right now.
That's
Right.
terrific.
I'm gonna have to check it out. In fact, when I was looking, I do think I saw that, and I think I might have saw a calendar too, or something that had days on it.
Yeah, so I did create a calendar, so a virtual school calendar for kids as well, that a parent can fill in, and then a virtual, well, not even a virtual, but really a daily calendar, daily schedule for ourselves, that we can fill in, what it is that we want to accomplish, or what our intention is, for each day of the week as women. Again, it helps to better organize some things. And not that I'm not, super rigid when it comes to organization. However, it helps me to have a framework and a visual for it, which always is helpful, which will help to lock it into my mind better.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it has been a pleasure. And those resources, we will definitely put a reminder for them in the show notes. So everybody visit the show notes. And we hope that, we wish you and your family well, safety, happiness, peace, and comfort.